Okay. I actually have a new book. I don't remember when I got this one. Here we go. Hold on. Actually, let me tell you the title. Making Jam in the Woods, My Relaxing Life Starts in Another World. Essentially another isekai. And I am curious as to how this will go, because I'm assuming it's got some kind of romance in it. Maybe. Who knows? We will find out. Prologue, A Sudden Start. Damn it, Kudo. You're gonna pay for this. I want my vacation days back. I cursed internally as I took a sip of mineral water, which by this point had already turned lukewarm. Ugh. Best water is cold water to drink, in my opinion. When it becomes warm, I toss it, because yuck. And normally I toss it because I'm at work, and I don't have really a chance to put it anywhere cold. Anyway, yeah. The time was now 5:30. I had been working the second shift without any breaks since 10 in the morning. 5:30. That's 7.5 hours, no break, no lunch break? Girl, that's illegal. I don't know about Japan, but it's definitely illegal here in the US. There weren't many people in the department store break room. The cafeteria counter was closed, with only the self-service water still available. I had finally managed to squeeze in a quick break. My junior coworker, Yoko, let out a sigh as she lay collapsed on the table opposite me. My foundation is coming off, she complained. I can't believe I was standing there selling stuff looking like this. What a disgrace. I glanced over at my junior who was fixing up her makeup. I caught a glance at myself in her mirror and realized that I looked just as exhausted. I was so hungry that I had lost my appetite. Wow, being so dang hungry that you don't even have an appetite to eat. That's sad. And I only had 10 minutes to spare before I had to return to the sales floor to relieve the workers who had come in for the early shift. I'm so unlucky. I was supposed to be off today. That's even worse. I know how it feels to have a day off, and then your boss calls and says, hey, can you come in? So-and-so called out. And 9 times out of 10, I will say, okay, because I can use the money. It had been 8 years since I'd started working as a makeup consultant for a cosmetics brand. I had just worked for 11 days in a row. I know that feeling too. I don't think I've worked that much in a row, but definitely not fun. So I had been dearly looking forward to this break. I had planned to sleep a ton and get caught up on housework. I even had an appointment booked at the hair salon, and I had bought a selection of small strawberries at the grocery store just before I had closed the night before, thinking I'd spend a relaxing day making jam. However, I had been woken up by a call from one of the salespeople at 7 in the morning. Sorry for calling on your day off, he had said. I hate to ask, but I wonder if you could cover for one of the stores today. Kudo-san, I replied. What are you talking about? It's so early. The roughness of my early morning voice definitely packed a punch. I could have sworn I heard the younger sales guy, who was already timid to begin with, let out a small yelp. If you're gonna wake me up, you should at least be cool about it. Sakashita-kun is in the hospital with stomach problems. There's no one else I can ask. Please, it's just for one day. Her one day off! And who knows when she's gonna get her next one? Why can't you ask someone else? Or have someone pull a double? Kudo had pleaded. Sakashita-chan, I had repeated, did you push her too hard, Kudo-san? Poor girl, how many times have I told you to go easy on her? She's typed to bottle everything up. There really shouldn't have been an issue regarding shifts, though, he had said. She's just so frail. All right, but I really can't do it today, I had said. You do know that this is my long-awaited vacation. After 11 straight days of work, right? I know, and we'll figure something out to make up for it. I had ended up relenting and agreeing to do it. That's me, too. I would do it. Essentially, I was always the go-to to be called into work when someone else called out. I was always the first one they would call. And because they know I would answer and I would say yes. Because like I said, extra money. But sometimes I've said no. Because I don't want to. And I didn't want to before, but I still said yes before. We were already struggling to stay fully staffed, so I knew all too well how hard it would be if a shift was low on people. I had worked at that particular store for around 2 years, so I already knew how everything worked, and I knew my junior employee there pretty well too, so it shouldn't have been too bad. But I was tired. Very tired. And as it had turned out, we'd had way too many customers come in. It wasn't even the beginning of a special campaign or anything, But the line had seemed to go on forever. I know that feeling too. I've been times where I've been at the register for a good hour or more straight, not moving away from it at all. I've known that. I've gotten those rushes before. It was so packed today. If you hadn't come in to help out, I can't imagine how many complaints we would have gotten, Yoko said. Especially from that customer. If it had just been me who had to deal with her, I would really have let her have it. Oh, how I wish we could. I wish we could. There have been so many times where I've been wanting to say something to customers, but I can't because, yeah, you risk getting fired. So, yeah, I had to bite my tongue. Oh, yeah, was there some trouble with her before or something, I asked? I didn't really have an issue. She just seemed like a perfectly normal, cute old lady. Of course you'd say that, Yoko said. One time I took a little longer than usual when giving her change, and she got so mad at me. She ended up complaining about the whole department store, and the floor manager was called over. It was awful. Really? I asked. Now that you mention it, I heard she taught etiquette at some prep school, so she's probably really strict about time and stuff like that. But to go that far over a few extra seconds? Long live the elderly whisperer. Huh? I mean, you always deal with a lot of older customers, right? Yoko explained. You even get a lot of repeat customers specifically asking for you. Well, that was true. There were even people who went out of their way and started visiting the store I had been relocated to. However, that was only because I was close to my grandmother, I said, and I'm surrounded by old folks where I live, so I guess I'm just used to dealing with them. My parents had worked a lot, and I had been born unexpectedly 8 years after my brother, so I had ended up being raised by my grandmother. She'd been involved in my day-to-day life, had come to every parent's day at school, and had participated in other school events too. My grandmother had loved doing housework, and she'd been fond of working with her hands. She would use a broom and feather duster for chores, and she'd make ohagi, a type of sweet rice ball covered in red bean paste or sesame seeds during important Buddhist holidays. I had always been stuck to her as a child, so I had gotten very accustomed to that old-fashioned way of living. My grandmother had always watched over me fondly as I would clumsily flip the umebushi, whatever, a type of pickled plum that were sitting out in the sun. Memories like that helped me find common ground with senior customers now. Although I had rarely had any opportunities to interact with my parents, that didn't change the fact that I loved them dearly. But as one would expect, I had ended up becoming much closer to the grandmother who raised me and spent every day with me. Looking back, I couldn't help but feel bad about the discrepancy, but my parents had welcomed the fact that I wasn't the type of child to throw a tantrum and demand their attention when they came home from work exhausted. Yeah, I don't think I was like that either growing up because I was the quiet kid. I always loved reading, so I always had my nose in a book. So yeah, that was probably a plus for my parents. My beloved grandmother had passed away, followed by both of my parents passing away in an accident. It had been decided that my brother and I would move away from our spacious single-family home and move into an apartment instead. All our neighbors at that apartment had been elderly people. She used to look after me a lot, and I guess now old people just remind me of her, I said, returning to the present day. Hey, how about we pretend I'm your mother-in-law and you could try serving me? What? No way! I could never live with my future husband's family, Yuko-chan said. They'd probably hate me anyway. I wonder about that. I think she'd treat you nicely, Yuko-chan, I teased. I've already decided, she explained. I'm going to get married next year and get a new house near where my parents live. Oh, do you have a boyfriend, I asked. I knew perfectly well that my junior, cheerful and adorable though she was, had been single for about a year, so now I was purposely poking fun at her. You're so mean, she said with a groan, collapsing onto the table again. You know I've got no chance of meeting anyone while working here. True enough, single men have no real reason to visit a makeup counter, I agreed. But I think Kudo-san is single. Gah, workplace romances are a no-go, she said, especially not with him. He's of no use to me. Last time I was here, he got a good dressing down from the store staff, I said as Yoko grumbled about the closest male coworker we had. The sales floor was ruled by women, but the manufacturers, higher-ups, and people on the business side of things were mostly men. The women here may not have called many of the shots, but what power they did have, they had eked out by speaking their minds and not wasting any time trying to curry favor with others. Men didn't find that particularly attractive, so it was difficult to go further than being colleagues, and besides, it was annoying working in a harem-like setting outnumbered by the opposite sex. Any self-respecting woman would never partake in a workplace romance, especially in such an environment, myself included, of course. As for me, I had broken up with my long-term boyfriend around 6 months earlier, and I had been enjoying the single life ever since. I had no need for useless men, neither in my professional nor private life. Ah, that's probably why so many people are choosing not to get married these days, or at least waiting until later in life to get married. Anyway, Chief Sakamoto has stomach problems, huh? What will we do if she quit? Yuko wondered out loud. I don't want you to try for area manager because I want you to come back to this store. I heard she's doing better now, so it should be okay, I reassured her, and personally, I like where I work now, so I'd be happy staying there forever. Plus, early morning rush hour on the way to the main office is awful. I had been approached about a promotion a while ago, but I had managed to avoid it, and in the end, it seemed they had decided on someone else. When you become a manager, you were mostly manager in name only. Aside from a few extra benefits, all you really ended up getting was more responsibility and unpaid overtime. Oh, God, yes. Most managers in retail are salaried. And when they're salaried, if you work over the amount of hours you're supposed to work, you don't get paid for them. So, yeah. If I had to work more hours and not get paid for them, no thank you. And plus all that responsibility will probably kill me. I had been trying to find a way to say no, but it was really an up or an out situation. I had no plans to marry, and I was in my late 20s. So I really should have been looking to make a name for myself and put down roots of this company, but I hadn't thought that far ahead yet. Even though I knew I was being blasé, I just couldn't settle down. There were no jobs I genuinely wanted to do, and I hadn't put much thought into where I had finally ended up. I didn't have any opportunities to leave this life behind and dive into a whole new life either. I'm only feeling so negative because I'm tired and hungry. I have a day off tomorrow. I let out a sigh as I glanced at my watch. Okay, good. She's got her day off scheduled for the next day instead of that day, which is good. She has to get the shift done. Oh no, break is almost over, I said. Sadly, Yuko added. The two of us sighed in unison and shared a smile. We had taken our heels off and been resting our tired feet under the large table in the break room, put them back on again before standing up. Well, back to the fray. There were only 10 minutes left before the jingle would start playing that indicated the store was about to close. The counters were still packed with people. I left a note to say I had some spare time and was going to grab some merchandise that had been left at another post, and then I headed out, leaving the sales floor behind me. It didn't seem like there was anyone else available to go pick up the product right around the closing time, and no one seemed to be around in the dimly lit back lot either, which was hidden behind a thin door that said employees only on it. The old department store was beginning to show signs of age. The main store floors had been repaired and restored, but behind the scenes, it was run down. I hurried along to the corner of the parking lot reserved for suppliers as I felt the building's history oozing out of the crevices in its ever-familiar concrete walls. I arrived at the small booth that seemed to be for security managers, but there was no security guards around. In front of the booth stood a single box. I checked the mailing address, and sure enough, it was for us. I filled out a receipt to confirm I had picked it up. As soon as I went to reach for the box to take it with me, a delivery truck pulled into the parking lot, then started to turn around. Uh-oh. Truck-coon? It didn't make any attempt to slow down as it reversed. Huh? Why isn't it slowing down? If you're going to drop stuff off, shouldn't you use the back of the parking lot? There's space to turn around there, right? Is he new? Hold up. Is that the driver collapsed on the steering wheel? Aw, shit. I gotta get out of here, I thought to myself, but it was too late. The truck was so close that I could feel the rush of air it displaced as it smashed into an ancient pillar, causing one of the old building's walls to collapse before it finally came to a stop. Then, with a loud rumbling sound, I felt the concrete crumble under my feet. I watched the ceiling fall down around me as if in slow motion. Okay, so that's how she dies. Not Truck-coon, technically, but because of Truck-coon. Oh no, I can't get out in time. Even though the truck didn't hit me directly, I wonder if this will count as a car accident, I casually thought to myself. I thought that became my last in this world. I really was unlucky, getting into an accident on a day when I wasn't even supposed to be working. This would count as a workplace accident, right? You get more important things to worry about right now, whether you're going to survive this. Oh, my face feels wet. My neck feels ticklish. Alright, I get it. I'll get up so you can stop looking at me. Warm breath. Huh? A dog? What's this huge Afghan hound-looking creature? That gave me a real fright. Huh? Where am I? Am I in the sky? An Afghan hound in the sky? Huh, of course, I'm lying on the ground and the Afghan hound is staring down at me from above. But how? What happened to me? I can't remember. Wait. Work, yeah, I was working, that's right. I was in the back when a truck hit me. I wonder if the driver was okay. So, am I in heaven? Yeah, okay, I'm in heaven. There are blue skies, and I can feel a calm, gentle breeze. I wonder if my grandma's here. My parents, too. I bet they're all mad I'm here long before my time. Sorry to my brother and my sister-in-law. I got here way before you. I'll leave what happens to the apartment to you guys. Sorry I've been such a bother as a sister. The strawberries. What a waste. I wanted to make jam with those strawberries. Wait, why is that my priority right now considering my current circumstance? Who knows? It was odd that this was all I thought about. If I did say so myself, I thought I had gotten quite attached to my life. But I guess by dying, I was letting go of all of it. The damp ground I was lying on felt real, though. The smell of the earth as well as the feeling of the wet leaves soaking through my clothes. It was all real. It reminded me of the riverbanks I played on as a child. Oh yeah, so I guess heaven isn't up in the clouds after all. Huh? Where did that friendly dog go? I wanted to pet him. I'm kinda tired. My body feels heavy like it's made of lead. Oh well, I'll just go get some shut-eye. As my consciousness faded, I heard a dog bark as well as the soft voice of a woman who scolded the dog somewhere in the distance. Chapter 1, Heaven but Not Heaven. Oh, there you are, a voice called out to me. Don't overdo it, your wounds aren't fully healed yet. I was standing in a spacious, well-maintained vegetable garden, carrying a basket and busily gathering enough vegetables for 2 people. A large Afghan hound named Buddy approached with his owner, Lady Adelaide. Lady Adelaide was the exemplary woman who had rescued me, a gravely injured stranger, and nursed me back to health. She had even provided me with food and shelter. Oh, and I hadn't died after all. Rather, I had come to a different world. Back on the day of my rescue, I had just lost consciousness again as I gazed up at the sky. The next thing I knew, I was awake, lying in a bed, and my whole body was in agony. There were 2 people staring at me. Neither of them was Japanese. One was an older man with graying hair, and the other was a refined older woman who had no doubt been just as refined in her youth. Grandma? I accidentally tried calling out to her. She was wearing a neat dress that looked like something out of a movie or a fairy tale. Her white hair was loosely tied up. Her concerned expression reminded me of my deceased grandmother's. And more importantly, as soon as I woke up, I felt like I was going to pass out again. My memory of the following 3 days was hazy due to the pain and fever. Lady Adelaide was the one to bring me food, help me eat, keep me cool, and selflessly nurse me back to health. She was a retired countess who had now served as the proprietress of a large mansion. She had a small staff of workers who would come twice a week, but she mostly did everything around the estate by herself. And even with all that on her plate, she was still an absolute goddess who looked after me without ever seeming annoyed by it. When I woke up again, the first thing I laid eyes on was the ceiling with ornate crown molding. In place of overhead lighting, there was wall scones with clear glass shades which were surrounded by wallpaper with a large floral print. Between the atmospheric lights and the wind flowing in through the wooden shutters on the window, it felt like I had woken up in a bedroom straight out of a children's book. I gently raised one of my arms. It was completely wrapped in bandages. My head and legs were also bandaged, apparently, but strangely enough, I wasn't in that much pain. I was wearing a beige floral nightgown, which I also couldn't help but think really suited the scene. I could feel my cheek when I touched it, so my nerves were still working just fine, and I could hear the birds singing outside. It seemed like I hadn't ended up in heaven after all. Yeah, you're still alive. When I sat up, my joints popped in a few places. I noticed I had 2 or 3 pillows, and the feeling began to creep over me that I was no longer in Japan. I was looking out at the lush green scenery from the window when there was a light knock, followed by the dark wooden door slowly opening. The woman I had seen before losing consciousness again entered the room. At first she seemed surprised to see me awake, but then her expression changed to one of relief, which once again reminded me of my grandmother. Although she wasn't Japanese like my grandmother, her beauty and elegance gave the 2 women a very similar presence. She placed the tray she was holding on the bedside table, sat herself down in a nearby chair, and began talking to me. Oh, you're awake. I'm glad. Danielle did say you were here. Or did say you were. Are you still in any pain? I recognized her soft voice from my dreams, so this is the woman who's been looking after me. I tried to thank her and offer some explanation, but nothing came out. It's a bit late for this now, but allow me to introduce myself, she said. I'm Adelaide Dustin, though you can call me Adelaide. May I ask your name? Although she had politely asked for my name, while gently holding my hand, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get any sound to come out of my mouth. Only air. I suddenly started to panic. I was struggling to breathe. Have you lost your voice? Lady Adelaide brought me some tea when she noticed that I was having trouble breathing. I grasped at my throat as I felt the color drape from my face, then I accepted the cup of tea, my hand shaking slightly, and took a sip. Drip. A teardrop splashed into the cup. I cried for the first time, then sobbing my eyes out. Although I didn't make any sound, it had finally hit me. I was in a different world with no way of going home. I had been the victim of an accident in my old world. I wasn't sure how I knew it, but deep down I was certain that was the reality of it. I continued to sob silently. In exchange for my life, it seemed I have lost my voice, and I ended up here. Even though I was aware of that fact, I couldn't get my feelings under control and felt like I was losing my mind. I was scared. I only came to my senses when Lady Adelaide carefully took the cup from my shaking hand and looked at me with a calm expression. "The doctor will see you in the afternoon and we can talk to him about this then," she said. "It's all right, he's a trustworthy person." All I could do was nod in response, and although I ended up crying for a long time, she stayed silently next to me the whole time, gently rubbing my back. I wondered if she was aware of how much that helped me. Looking back, that was what allowed me to turn things around. I finally stopped crying, feeling embarrassed that I had been sobbing like that at my age, and smiled grudgingly. Lady Adelaide seemed relieved and left me to get a fresh cup of tea. I vowed to myself that this time I'd drink the tea before it got cold. I felt like I could see more clearly. Once I had finally calmed down, I was instructed to rest until the doctor came, so I laid back down in bed. I took a towel that I had been using to reduce the swelling around my eyes from all my crying from my face, and as I opened my eyes, I noticed the large dog that I had seen before. Even though I had never had the chance to own a pet myself, I loved animals. I felt myself smile as the dog approached me, wagging his tail happily. I wasn't afraid of him, even as he came close enough to get a good look at my face. It looked like he wanted attention, so I stretched my arm out and stroked him on the head. As I lowered myself back into bed, he closed his eyes, seemingly enjoying it. As I scratched his neck and behind his ears, he made a cute sound and nudged me with his hand. How adorable! From what I knew about dog breeds, he seemed like an Afghan hound. His dark brown, coffee-colored eyes seemed like they wanted to say something as he stared at me. "You're the one who found me." I moved my lips to speak, but no sound came out. But this time, instead of crying about it, I smiled. And even though I couldn't speak, I couldn't help but keep trying. I guess I won't lose my habit of talking to myself anytime soon after living alone for so long. The dog moved closer to me, and letting me look after him put me in a good mood, so I lifted myself up again and started petting him properly, and that was when a little face popped out of his long silver fur, followed by an equally small body. Huh? A fairy? It was about the size of my palm and had transparent wings attached to its back. Its eyes, which were brimming with excitement, met mine, and before I could react, there was a sound of wings flapping as more of them appeared. Are they fairies? Am I in some sort of fantasy world? I was confused, but I gently put out my hand and a couple of the small figures landed on it. I gave one of them a poke and it twisted its body away as if it had been tickled. I tickled it again with the tip of my finger and it narrowed its eyes, seeming to be enjoying it. Adorable. More of them continued to appear, and as I was playing with them, there was a knock at the door. "I'm coming in. How are you Lady Adelaide was followed in by the gray-haired old man I had already recognized. There was also one more person, a tall young man. He looks like an actor in a foreign film. All of them were looking at me with shocked expressions. As I wondered to myself why, the small beings that had been warming up to me flew hurriedly out the window with a flutter of their wings. Oh, they were so cute. "Nice to meet you," the older man said as he regained his composure. "Ah, yes, I can see you're looking better already." He was dressed in white, and he had reintroduced himself as Dr. Daniel Reynolds. The handsome blonde guy was his pupil and assistant, Mark Disraeli. They were the only doctors in the village of Missel, and they had been treating me. "We heard about your voice from Addie, but before we get into that, let me have a look at your wounds," Dr. Daniel said. After confirming that I could understand him, he skillfully removed my bandages and began a brief medical examination. Dr. Daniel had a serious stare, and combined with his movements and his orders from Mark, it gave off the impression that he was a very skilled doctor. He checked my arms and my head, and I swung my legs over the side of the bed so he could examine them. Sitting like that was fine, but when I tried to stand up, excruciating pain shot down my left leg. I screamed, though it made no sound, and collapsed back into bed, tears streaming down my face. Yeah. The doctor placed his hand on my bandaged leg, and somehow the pain receded. He might as well have said, pain, go away, and had it actually work. Maybe there's healing magic in this game? In this world? Somewhat? I actually stared at my leg in shock. "Make sure not to overdo it," he said. "Healing magic isn't very effective." That's what I thought! Huh? Magic? Did he just say magic? Just as I thought, this world was a lot different from the one I'd come from. And I was in for another shock. According to the people who had rescued me, I was apparently a spirit caller who had been summoned to this world by spirits that rarely ever appeared on this continent. I was their caller. It wasn't taboo, or nor was it a secret. There were even past records of such a thing. Those who were known as spirit callers had two traits. The first was that they had no magical ability themselves. The second was that they were able to see and interact with spirits and fairies, so I wasn't in the wrong for automatically thinking this whole situation is like something out of a fantasy. Magic was perfectly common here. Humans and animals all had magical powers. If you didn't, it was like being dead. Oh. Whoa, so I'm basically a zombie by their standards. I had been in bad shape when they found me in Lady Adelaide's back garden, though looking at myself now, I could hardly believe it. I had no visibly bad injuries, and although I still couldn't stand on my left leg, I was in almost no pain. I had been ready to die when I showed up in this world, so I must have really been in a bad way. But I had recovered to the point of being able to move around in just only a few days. Magic is amazing. Apparently, Dr. Daniel realized I had no magical ability as he tended to my wounds. The way I had appeared, as well as my strange clothes and what I looked like, he had given him the idea. It had been the small winged people from before that had confirmed it for him. I was the only one who could see them. To everyone else, they appeared as small grains of golden light. These little lights that looked a bit like fireflies were known as fairy lights in this country. They usually lived deep within forests and hid away whenever they came into contact with humans. Even actually seeing them was very rare, but they had come right over to me. It's probably overwhelming telling you this all of a sudden, Dr. Daniel said as he pulled a book with a wonderful cover out of his bag. In this book you'll find everything we know about spirit callers so far. I borrowed it especially from the Royal Library. The information itself is what I've talked about with you already, so it shouldn't be too difficult, but are you able to read the words? Judging from his mention of a royal library, I figured that this country must have been run by a monarchy. I flicked through the book and saw words made up of characters I didn't recognize, but for some reason I was able to read them anyway. And strangely, when I was passed a pen and paper, I was able to write the characters as well. I still didn't have a lot of strength, so it ended up looking like it had been written by a child who had only just learned their letters. But it was still a relief to learn that I would be able to communicate by writing. I'll continue to make daily visits, Dr. Daniel advised. You should slowly make your way through the book with Addie. They asked me to tell them my name. However, when they looked at the paper where I had written it, both the doctor and Lady Adelaide looked confused. It seemed they couldn't read my name. I'm pretty good with other alphabets, but I can't read this. How about you, Mark? I can't read it either, Mark said. Oh man, he's judging me. The assistant Mark had seen to me with that issue, and he'd been careful when wrapping my bandages, otherwise treating me. However, he was, how do I put it? Really cool? No, haughty? He was ridiculously good looking, which certainly helped build that image, and I can understand somewhat why he would find it foolish to trust someone who had just randomly appeared out of the sky, and hence why he was acting a little standoffish. In a way, it was actually stranger that Lady Adelaide had been so concerned for me. She had listened with great concern to the doctor's opinion on both my voice and health status. My voice? I still hadn't worked out what was going on with that. All I knew was that the doctor had seen to me and he couldn't find anything wrong. Spirit callers are... That's right, according to this, there are a lot of cases of them losing their memories, but in your case, you might have lost your voice instead, the doctor said, flipping through the book's pages. Lady Adelaide seemed like she didn't agree with that conclusion, but it made sense to me. If I had lost anything else, it was my eyes. Most Japanese people have dark brown eyes, but now one of my eyes was a light brown, almost golden. After crying earlier, Lady Adelaide had fixed my hair, and when I looked at myself in the mirror she'd handed me after, I almost screamed, except no voice would have come out anyways. At that moment, I didn't know why my eye color had changed, or if there even was a reason for it. Unfortunately, my eyesight was still bad, and I didn't have my glasses or contact lenses, so it was a little hard to see. But it wasn't so bad that I couldn't go about my daily day-to-day life. I could see faces if they were up close, and recently I'd been suffering from about a dry eye, so I'd only been wearing my glasses on the commute to work. I hadn't even worn contacts when I was on the sales floor, so everything was a little blurry. But as long as I wasn't watching TV or driving my car, it was mostly fine. Anyway, even though I had written my name using that language of this world, it seemed nobody could read it, so I asked for a name from this world. How about Margaret? Lady Adelaide suggested as she looked at my ears, explaining that the name meant pearl. I had arrived in this world mostly empty-handed, with only my destroyed clothes, one shoe, and a broken wristwatch. But I still had my pearl earrings, which were in a teardrop shape, similar to the ones in the famous painting, though mine are made of small keshi pearls. The clasp was designed in such a way that it wouldn't fall out, even if something were to catch on it. We weren't allowed to wear accessories while at work, but these pearls had been passed down from my grandmother to my mother to me, so I had secretly worn them at work in place of an omamori as a kind of lucky charm. My hair hid the earrings well, and even when someone realized I was wearing them, they let it go because they weren't particularly sparkly and were subtler than diamonds or anything like that. Lady Adelaide had made my name a small reminder of my past life. Ah, that's a wonderful name, Dr. Daniel said with a smile. I felt like I was about to cry again, so I distracted myself by petting Buddy. As promised, the doctor came to visit me every day. I felt my wounds warm up as he poured healing magic into them. Some of my scars had faded over time, and now they were hardly visible. Even with my broken arm, while my finger movement was still slow, I hardly felt any pain. I couldn't say it was completely healed, but my left leg and foot, which had been damaged the most, were healed enough that I could stand. Apparently this was nothing short of a miracle. Mark had let it slip that even the doctor had been certain my leg wouldn't heal, so that made it even more amazing that it actually had. Magic is amazing. How come I can't use it, though? I would have preferred to be able to use it. At first, the doctor made his house calls while I lay in the bed in the guest room, but once I was able to move around more, they let me meet him in the kitchen, on the veranda, or just wherever I happened to be at that moment. The veranda that connected to the living room and the garden was my favorite spot. The wide wooden deck had a roof, a table, a bench, and a rocking chair. When my leg hurt or when I wasn't feeling too well, I found that being outside helped a lot, but daydreaming in the rocking chair was the best. In it, I had an unobstructed view of Lady Adelaide's field and the forest that was behind it, silhouetted against the wide blue sky. Whenever I gazed at the view from the rocking chair, I felt my mind and body relax. I especially loved rainy days. Here in Missel, the rain was gentle. The soft raindrops made a pleasant sound, so it felt like I was surrounded by a soft curtain. When I inhaled deeply, breathing in the mixture of rain and forest smells, I felt it travel all the way to my fingertips, which was peculiar. The days were still chilly, and out of worry that I would catch a cold, I'd wrap myself up in a blanket. A doctor and Mark would smile wryly when they saw me all bundled up on the veranda, but of course they didn't try and stop me. Okay, only 31 minutes, dang. In the spare moments between treatments, the doctor and Lady Adelaide would ask me questions while being mindful of my condition, and I would answer them. I had come here with absolutely nothing, and I had nothing to hide from these kind people, so I did my best to answer everything I could. The first thing I learned about was the spirits. Spirits were actually very important in this world. They played an integral part in making sure it was stable, and spirit callers seemed to assist them in doing so. If the spirits were looked after well, they would bring good fortune, whereas if they became angry, they would bring about disasters that would drive the world to ruin. For that reason, spirit callers tend to be just as well respected as the spirits. I was really perplexed when I found that out. After all, I was just a former sales assistant in her late 20s. I wasn't really someone who could ever have anywhere near that much influence on a whole world or a country. I must have looked concerned thinking about it because Dr. Daniel patted me on the head like a child. You don't need to worry, Margaret, he said. Just think of this country as a place where spirits and spirit callers live in harmony. Also, it's said that spirit callers these days rarely have to do anything anyway, and they just live their lives in peace, Lady Adelaide added, opening up the book we had borrowed. Since I had worked in a customer-facing job, I was very accustomed to meeting and speaking with new people, but that didn't mean I wanted to mingle with big shots or be revered like some kind of shrine maiden. I knew absolutely nothing about this world. Don't worry, we'll let them know your wishes, Lady Adelaide reassured me. Due to the nature of spirit callers, it only made sense that they needed to report to the Royal Palace. Dr. Daniel had volunteered to report in for me. It seemed that before opening a practice here, he had worked in the Royal Palace. As a result, he had still had a lot of contacts there. He wasn't just some old countryside doctor. He was quite old, though, with wrinkles around his eyes when he smiled. He also seemed to have known Lady Adelaide since a long time ago and had decided to work in Missel because of her. It seemed the government often put the wishes of the spirit callers first. If war were to break out, or if there were internal conflict, then it will be different. But the king of this country seemed like a stand-up person. For that, I was grateful, and if I wanted to work in the palace or the temple, they'd said they would be happy to take me on. Lady Adelaide looked at me with a kind look, like my grandmother would, and softly let me know that I could stay with her until I was fully healed, and then she would put my wishes first. There was really no end to her kindness. After giving me some time to think, Lady Adelaide asked what I would like to do. I wrote down that I wanted to repay her for all she had done for me, and if it wasn't any bother, she could let me stay here as a maid. I didn't even need to think about it. I was enamored with Lady Adelaide, not least of all because of how much she reminded me of my grandmother. We were in the countryside, and Lady Adelaide's mansion was a little old-fashioned, but it suited me. I couldn't imagine what the royal palace and the city were like, nor of what people's lives were like there. Since waking up, I had gotten quickly accustomed to this way of life. It felt like something that had been lost in the midst of my busy life before it had returned. I was more than used to cleaning without modern appliances. I had done the same when I'd lived with my grandmother, and once my wounds had fully healed, I would be able to help with field work. If they let me work here to earn my keep, it would really help me as well as let me pay back my treatment costs. On the other hand, we were talking about this roughly 1 month after I had arrived, long enough for me to understand that Lady Adelaide truly lived alone. The only guests she had were Dr. Daniel and Mark, who came for my checkups. It didn't seem like any relatives or family visited. Her husband had passed away a long time ago, and I heard she had a son living in the capital. Naturally, there were no phones, but it seemed like he never sent any letters either, despite living so far away. I had sometimes seen Lady Adelaide gazing wistfully at the pictures of her family lined up on top of her hearth. She lived alone in this mansion with Buddy as her only companion, but if she was happy that way, then my request might be asking too much. So I wrote that down too. I'm so fond of you, so I want to stay with you, but I don't want to cause you any trouble. In reality, I would still be another mouth to feed. Dr. Daniel was supportive of my idea, saying that he had been worried about Lady Adelaide being on her own for a while now. I've recommended she hire an attendant or a maid before, but she's always declined, he explained. I mean, I do understand that at her age you need to be careful about living with someone you don't know, but this mansion is separated from the village. If something were to happen, it would be a while before anyone would even notice. Buddy, who had found me passed out in the back garden first, had run all the way to the clinic and brought the doctor and his assistant back with him. Dr. Daniel looked horrified when he recalled the moment they thought of something had happened to Lady Adelaide. Addie is quite relaxed around you, so I think you'd be a great fit. If you stayed with her, I'd be most grateful, he continued. I'm fond of you too, so I'd love for you to stay here, Lady Adelaide said. Of course you can. With Dr. Daniel urging her on, Lady Adelaide happily accepted my proposal. It was almost like I'd asked her to marry. She said yes. But I won't take you on as a maid. If anything, I just want you to live here with me. Just to essentially be her friend, be her companion. I nodded repeatedly as she stroked my hair with her slender fingers. I mean, you could always just tell her that she reminds you so much of your late grandmother. And if you ever want to leave, you're free to do so anytime. The royal capital is probably a lot better than living with me for a young woman. I responded with, I'll only leave when you want me to. And Lady Adelaide laughed so hard she had tears in her eyes. In that case, you'll be here until I'm dead. We both laughed, knowing that was a long time away. Okay, let's keep going. Strawberries! Strawberries! Woo-hoo! Strawberries! But seriously, Lady Adelaide's fields were the best! Not only did they have vegetables, but they had strawberries too, and there were blueberry bushes across the way. As someone who had gone blueberry and strawberry picking every year without fail in the past, I was really excited. I had even heard that there were other berries in the forest behind the back garden, depending on the time of year. I couldn't wait for the seasons to change. For now, though, it's strawberries. I gathered some yesterday. I'll gather some today, too. I'll gather the ones that are ripe and eat them like that, or maybe make them into sweets. How luxurious, so delicious. There are a lot of ripe ones today, so maybe I can make jam with them. It did depend on how many of the strawberries I could use for jam, though. You could have called me a professional the way I was gathering the strawberries with ease, my face glowing with joy. Here I am with my wooden basket, a gingham, checkered cloth inside. I'm in my element. I feel like I was in the world of Anne of Green Gables. Gables. Buddy was waiting for me at the entrance to the field, wagging his tail. I gave him a pat and we headed back together. I sang a song silently, of course, while I enjoyed the beautiful day. The early morning sunlight was shining through the trees, and a fresh spring wind was blowing. The birds were chirping pleasantly. The forest behind the back garden was the Count's private property, so there was rarely any villagers there, which meant I could act as weird as I liked. It was the best! I spun around, dancing along to the waltz in my head. Ouch! Okay, my ankle still hurts. It had been around 2 months since I had arrived. My injuries were nearly all healed with the exception of my left leg and foot. But even then, if I didn't run or fool around like I'd just done, it didn't cause me too much trouble. It seems this world also had the 4 seasons. I was relieved when I heard that the summer wasn't that hot. Summers in Tokyo were so humid. I was born in Hokkaido, and I never could get used to Tokyo summer, so I'd always lose a lot of weight in the summer. There were also tons of fruit and vegetables and other similar things to what I was used to, though. They might have been slightly different. In my past life, a lot of produce was selectively bred, but in this world, it seemed to be closer to the original strain, so the fruits were a bit smaller. Their colors, shapes, and seasons were also a tiny bit different. I was so used to vegetables that had been cultivated in a greenhouse, so maybe I hadn't been aware of the seasons because of that. And the flavors were similar, but if I'm being totally honest, they were way more delicious here. The flavors were deep and rich. The fresh vegetables were so good that I could give them a quick wash, cut them up, sprinkle on some salt or oil, and eat them just like that, and it was delicious. And when I used them to make a soup, I didn't need to add a bouillon cube or fond du veau. If I just threw in a few aromatics like garlic, shallots, or even bacon, it ended up tasting just like a provincial-style soup. To be honest, I didn't really know what provincial style is, but that's what it feels like. It's delicious. I love rice, but I love bread too. It's not like I'm so fussy that I won't eat anything that isn't Japanese food. I'm just a glutton. I'll eat anything as long as it's tasty. I felt like I was leading a healthy lifestyle for the first time in my life, now that I had easy access to a wide variety of fresh vegetables with good quality meat and dairy products readily available next door. I mean, my skin is so soft and smooth, and I've even lost a little weight, though that could be due to all the moving around I'm doing as I clean up. As someone who used to work in cosmetics, I was deeply impressed by how good the produce here was good for my skin. In fact, I actually ended up making my own simple skin lotion using some of the local vegetables, but your eating and sleeping and other habits can also have a big impact. Like waking up early, eating a balanced diet, not overeating, exercising regularly, and being around clean air and water. Of course, I had known all of that before, but I had been so busy in my past life that I had never been able to do any of it. Now, it was just my daily life. I wonder if Sakashita-chan's stomach problems had gotten any better. She needs to follow a stress-free life. I'm aware that's impossible, though. Yeah. Sometimes I would still feel a twinge in my chest when I thought about the past. But strangely enough, I never once thought I hated it here or that I wanted to go back. I did sometimes feel uneasy, but it was still better than what I'd had before. I'm here after all, so I might as well enjoy it. Okay, I think I'm going to end this off here, and I'll see you guys in the next video.